Before I introduce Lesley and she gets going, just a few things I wanted to say on behalf of the network. Sorry, I just need to. So the Q&A will be facilitated by Jeff at the end of the talk. So please put any questions you have in the chat box during the event. All of our webinars go on our YouTube channel and can be found on our website under resources and YRN webinars. So if you had to come off early for some reason tonight, it'll be there in a couple of days, along with all the other great resources we have in that section. Please stay in contact with us. We imagine there are quite a lot of people who are new to the network here tonight. We're really excited to have you here, and we're really looking forward to supporting you in the journey you're going to take to help rewild your schools. So we're on all the major social media networks. We're also on Mighty Networks, which is a closed social platform where people can ask questions, share interesting resources. It's a really great way to learn more. We have a map. If you are setting up a new project, please come on the map and see who's near you. Everyone is so friendly in the rewilding community. They all want to help you have the best start possible. And also, if you are already rewilding, please put your project on. It's a great way to meet people nearby who might be able to help you, or you might even be able to give them a bit of advice. And also under our feature stories, there's some really inspiring examples of rewilding that's happening in Yorkshire that might be able to get the sparks flying. We like to do as much of our content and certainly our webinars for free, because we want it to be as accessible as possible for everybody. But in the same vein, we do really, really appreciate any donations that we receive. So you can do that via our website under the Support Us tab, or you can see here there's a way to donate by phone as well, and it's always appreciated. So if you're really keen, you can join the Wild 100 Club, which helps just all of our base costs get covered by this club, and the generous people who just put £100 a year towards us. So we're always very grateful to them. So our next webinar fits in really nicely with this webinar, Rewilding Schools, because it's about community rewilding. And the few projects that we know about already are working with the community alongside. You know, we all know schools are a community anyway, but if you can actually get the wider community interested in what you're doing, it can have such a powerful knock-on effect. So that could be a great one for you to join as well. So over to Lesley. I've bought her book, devoured her wonderful book, The Rewilding Manual for Schools. And what she's done with Operation Future Hope is really, really inspiring. So thank you so much for being here tonight. I'll stop sharing my screen now and allow you to jump in, and we'll see you at the end for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Right, let's do this. Here we go. Fantastic. Well, hello, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to be with you tonight and to be able to share with you the work of Operation Future Hope. For all of you who are signing in from Yorkshire, I was actually born in Yorkshire myself. I was born in Sheffield on the way to Bakewell Show. So it's absolutely fantastic to be speaking to you tonight. And I spent the first 16 years of my life growing up on the east coast of Yorkshire and have lots of fond memories, beautiful county. So Operation Future Hope has been operating now since 2018. It began with me finishing a degree as a mature student in studying conservation and wildlife management, and learning about the shocking statistics of biodiversity loss. And at that time, much as today, actually, many people were speaking about climate change, but very few people were really paying attention to biodiversity loss. So I started by speaking in schools and connecting with young people, working with conservation photographers around the world, and just telling the story about what was happening to wildlife. And young people were getting very inspired. They wanted to take action. But when I left, nothing was happening. Nothing was changing. There was no culture change within the school. And so I came across Isabella Tree's wonderful book, Wilding, which I'm sure many of you have read. And that was a light bulb moment for me. I knew that what Isabella and Charlie had done on the Knepp estate was scalable and that we could roll this out in our schools across the country. So since 2018, that's exactly what we've been doing. We've piloted a project with over 20 schools, both urban and rural, primary and secondary, independent and state, finding out what works and what doesn't work in terms of rewilding in schools and overcoming those obstacles. We've then taken that knowledge and put it into an education program, a rewilding manual, so that any school anywhere can now rewild their school grounds. And I'm going to share that with you later. So what I'd really like to do tonight is show you how rewilding in schools combined with up-to-date ecological education can actually provide a recipe for cultural change, and that this is actually what we really need to see the change in the world that we need before the time runs out, and it's not too late. So before we get on to all the good news and all the great stuff, I do want us to just remember the current situation, and it's going to be a very positive talk, so don't worry, we're only going to spend a very short time on this, but I think it's very important to remind ourselves of the context in which we are talking about rewilding in school grounds. So some of you may know who this is. This is Professor Johan Rockström, and he is one of the world's leading earth scientists. Now, he and his colleagues at the Stockholm Resilience Centre have studied the planetary boundaries, that are the living systems that enable equilibrium and balance on the planet. And I'm going to show you that diagram in a moment. But I just wanted to bring to your attention this documentary on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's called Breaking Boundaries, The Science of Our Planet. It's absolutely fantastic. It's narrated by Sir David Attenborough, and it's one of the clearest pictures I've found in science to translate what's actually happening in the world, and therefore what action we need to take to solve the crisis that we're facing. So this diagram here is the work of Johan and his colleagues. It is the Planetary Boundaries Framework. Now, why is this so important to us at Operation Future Hope? Well, we base our ecological education in schools on this science, because this, if you like, is a selfie of our impact on the planet predominantly over the last 50 years. Just to explain this a little bit to you, in case you haven't seen it before, let me just see if I can do this. Here we go. So obviously this is the planet, this is the Earth, and this circle around the outside of the planet here is the safe operating space for humanity. So living within that boundary, we are not taking any more each year than the Earth's ability to regenerate herself. When we go beyond that ecological ceiling, we step into the danger zone. And we, as you can see now, have broken 6 boundaries. And what's really, really important about this science and the way it's presented is it reveals to us the interconnectedness of all life. It shows us that all the living systems are interrelated. So when we have land use change, which is habitat loss, we impact biodiversity. We also impact our emissions and climate change. There's probably chemical pollution. We may be, if it's for farming or intensive development, we may be impacting the phosphorus and nitrogen cycles and so on. So teaching young people about the interconnectedness of life is a really important foundation for then looking at the solutions, because then we can start to ask, what are we doing in our lives that is impacting the planet as a whole? And we start to see the interrelatedness of life. So this is the science that we use in the education program that I shall show you later. But the key point here, Charles Salin, who is a marine conservationist, tells us environmental education has failed because it is not keeping pace with environmental degradation. And in my experience, this is true. We are not teaching at the moment our young people the scale of the problem. We're not presenting the science in a clear way and then giving them the tools and the understanding of how to solve that problem. So finally, that all translates into the sort of horrible statistics that we're all on this Zoom call probably well aware of, that 1 out of 8 million species are threatened with extinction. It's predicted by 2050 that the world's fisheries will have collapsed. Now that's extraordinary because we need healthy oceans for life on this planet. They play such an important role. We currently need 1.7 planets to sustain our modern industrial consumerist culture. Over 68% of genetic life has been destroyed in the last 50 years, which is absolutely shocking. And our own nation is one of the most depleted in the world. Now, presenting young people with this information is important as long as we then present it with the solution. And rewilding in schools is a very empowering way of showing them and enabling them to take action themselves. So the first question then is, how on earth can we expect young people to restore and regenerate the natural world, which is going to be their major task in their lives to do, when their school grounds are in ecological wastelands? Now, not all school grounds are ecological wastelands, but I have to tell you, 90% of the schools that I visited are. We must change what and how we teach children about nature. So what are we doing? Well, we have been rewilding in schools, enabling teachers, staff, students to rewild, understand how to rewild their school grounds. I'm going to show you examples of that now. We've developed an online rewilding education platform that is a year-long education program to equip teachers and students with resources for rewilding and learning environmental education. I shall show you that a little bit later too. And we've developed the Rewilding Manual for schools. So now for some good news. Let's have a look at some case studies. I'm going to share 2 with you this evening. What I'm going to share with you now actually is what we teach young people to do in the online course. So they will learn pretty much everything that I'm showing you now. So the first thing we do is help to understand how to carry out a site evaluation in very simple terms, and to have a look at the surrounding landscape, to start thinking about connectivity. Are there ways of joining up with other habitats in the area? So all of these skills, all of this understanding. And then to look at the school grounds and see the different areas. So we've got area C here, which is the more formal functional areas of the school. And this opens up opportunities for climbing plants, vertical living walls, getting rid of ornamental plantation and bringing in plants for pollinators, native plants. And then areas A and B, where the further away we go from the school, the wilder we can become. And all of those hedgerows and edges, as I'm going to show you, are prime targets for rewilding. So this is a pretty standard picture of what I find when I visit a school. Now, as you can see here, the hedgerows are intensely managed. You can also see this brown dead zone along the base of the hedgerow and around the trees. And this will usually find this across the entire site. And this is where there's been herbicide treatment, killing off all vegetation. Most school grounds are managed by external contractors or the councils in the state system. If it's an external contractor, the big problem we face is that the more they spray, the more they chop, and the more they mow, the more they can be paid. So the positive side of that for rewilding, for schools making that decision, is that when that contract is up for renewal, all of these areas can be taken out of that contract. All of this activity can be stopped. We put the hedgerows into a 3-year rotational conservation management scheme, and herbicide spraying stops. So immediately we start to see the budget improve and rewilding actually saving money for schools. So again, here at the Griffin School, this was the far playing field, and you can see again the hedgerow intensely managed, herbicide treatment along the base of all the hedges. Just go backwards there, and that is also around the trees. And obviously this will green up as summer comes, but it will be arrested in that state for the entire year. So it's just a monoculture landscape. But under rewilding, we can see already in just a year, we're now developing this nice deep margin at the base of the hedgerows. The hedgerows are now nice and bushy, full of berries. They'll be cut not for the first 3 years actually at the Griffin School, and then only in sections on rotation. So there's plenty of cover all year round for wildlife and plenty of shelter and food through the winter. Again, this is the same playing field, but at the top around the corner. The same treatment going on here, intensive management of hedgerows, mowing, herbicide treatment. And again, this landscape would remain pretty much in this state in the entire year, apart from the hedgerows coming and the trees coming into leaf. But under rewilding, you can see here, even in that same year, the regeneration starting to happen, and blackthorn starting to suffer here. And if you look at this yellow area at the top of this bank, you can see here this fantastic natural regeneration that occurred. Now, all of these wildflowers were just lying dormant in the seedbed, waiting to be liberated. And there was hawksbit, self-heal, yarrow, pyramidal orchids. And it was just in the first year of rewilding, ablaze with colour and wildflowers, grasses, and full of invertebrates, full of bees and butterflies. It was absolutely fantastic. And it just shows what can be done with no money at all, and how actually we can save money. And it is incredibly inspiring for the children to see the nature regeneration at such speed when we just take that intensive management away. And this is that same border looking down the opposite direction, and you can see now how the hedgerows are really filling out, and the natural regeneration is almost unrecognizable from 2 slides ago, isn't it? And you can imagine all the wildlife that is in here, and all the bird life and small mammals. It's absolutely fantastic. Same field again, and here we have another bank, and you can see the level of intensive mowing. And later, a year later, you can see the natural regeneration. And this bank is full of field voles. It's full of finches taking all the seed heads off, and all sorts of other bird life. And we have kestrel hawking up and down here. And again, minimal management and just allowing natural regeneration to occur. This is an area now coming closer to the school, but you can see again the intensive management continuing around this playing field. And again, this is similar to what you will find pretty much in the way that all school grounds are managed. And again, here we go, in a year later, you can see this natural regeneration coming back. And the importance is to keep a really tight mown edge. You'll see me mention this quite a lot throughout the talk, because this enables the rewilding area and the formal functional area to be demarked, and it looks like a decision, and it keeps everybody happy, which is very important when rewilding in schools. And we have yarrow naturally regenerating now, and the children have been sowing some cornfield annuals to get a little bit more diversity into a meadow area. And this is our lovely kestrel who's taken up residence at the Griffin School. So now let's have a look at a different school. This is an independent school, a private school in Sherborne. And the reason for showing you this infographic here is really to give you the idea of a whole scale approach. So when we go into a school to rewild, or when students are studying on the online course, we're not looking at just one little pocket here or a little bank over there. We're looking at what we can do across the entire site, because really what we're after is a culture change. So we want to see rewilding across the entire school site. And here you can see some of the options that we're working with: conservation hedgerows, wildlife ponds, habitat corridors, grass margins, lavender walk near the school, climbing plants, bat boxes, bird boxes, spring meadow, so planting bulbs, spring bulbs for early nectar sources, a new orchard, all of these sort of options for an entire whole school site approach. And this is a photograph of Sherborne Girls' School. And what we are seeing here, again, as you can see, is this complete monoculture landscape looking up the playing field. You can see the sports field, white line on the right there. And it would just remain like that the entire year. That's a pretty standard sports field in an independent school. And now, after rewilding, they had a budget here. So we did some topsoil stripping and made a bank at the far end, which I'll show you in a moment. You can see what happened in a few months at the girls' school in Sherborne. And again, we've got this buffer zone here, just creating that demarcation from where the playing fields start. And if we look a little bit further up, this is the top half of the meadow with a new orchard planted. We made a wildlife bank here, new ponds, and it's a complete transformation. And this did have a little bit of budget available for it, but even if it had been left to naturally regenerate, there are other ways that we outline in the Rewilding Manual for creating a meadow area. So absolutely incredible what is possible in terms of the transformation of playing field boundaries. So now we're just looking at another area around the back of a sports centre at the school. And again, intensive management. You can see herbicide treatment at the base of the trees here. And here we go, natural regeneration with a very nice mown crisp path through, so that students can actually explore the area, and also it looks cared for, which is, again, it is really important in school settings. And here we've got a typical bank, just mown, nothing going on at all for wildlife. And just by allowing natural regeneration, here we've got yarrow and all sorts of grasses, self-heal in here, hawksbit again, naturally regenerating. And again, just keeping that really smart, crisp edge, very important when you're rewilding in schools. So to summarize, really, this little section of the webinar this evening, when we go into most schools, this is what we find on the left here. We find evidence of herbicide treatment, chemical spraying. We find intensive management, and it's just a barren landscape with nothing to inspire young people at all. With rewilding, this is what we can create. So I'm sure that you'll all agree, it's absolutely a no-brainer. And when you actually think that this is all cost, not only doesn't cost anything, but actually saves money ultimately in terms of contractors and costs, it's just a wonderful thing to do. And we obviously then see the return of nature to our schools. All sorts of wildlife moves in. and we see the return of young people to nature, getting involved in the restoration, getting involved in becoming part of the solution, part of the healing of the planet. So now I would like to ask the question, is rewilding on its own enough? This infographic here was created by over 50 scientists, and an article, a study was done by over 50 scientists, and this infographic is a representation of their findings. And they were really trying to find out, what is it that we've got to do to bend the curve of habitat loss and wildlife loss? And they discovered that if we continue with business as usual, even with all that we're doing at the moment, this is the trajectory that we're on. And it's a sad fact that we know that we are still losing biodiversity, that biodiversity loss has not come to a halt. If, with increased conservation efforts, and this is why rewilding is so critically important, we start to bend the curve, and that's fantastic. We start to bend that curve. And that's why the work that you're doing, that all of you are involved with, is so important. But here's the really exciting bit. If, with increased conservation efforts, more sustainable production and more sustainable consumption, and what they're really focusing on here is farming and the way that we produce our food, and they're talking about moving to plant-based diets and so on and so forth. But I would like to say, if we move to a regenerative culture with increased conservation efforts, look at what happens. And so, in answer to this question, is rewilding on its own enough? I believe that what we really, really need to combine with rewilding is education. And if we do that, and with the two working together, I believe that we have a mechanism for creating a regenerative culture. And I believe that our schools and our young people are at the very heart of this. And the reason for that is that schools are in the heart of our communities. Schools and our young people our families are connected to our schools, and our communities are connected to our schools. So by working through the education system with young people, we have a way to really bring about a cultural change. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about the Rewilding Education Platform. So this is a free resource for schools, for state schools, and it is a year-long course with over 33 lessons. And the first module covers really planetary scale education, really bringing home to young people the interconnectivity of all life, the interrelatedness of all life, the closed system of our planet and how our living systems work. We then look at the state of nature globally and here in the UK, and we ask the question, why do we need to rewild? And we start to answer that question. The second module looks at what is rewilding, and we start to explore large-scale rewilding, looking at Yellowstone National Park and amazing projects like that, coming right down to smaller scale, middle scale rewilding like the NET project, and then smaller scale rewilding, what we can do in our own communities, what we can do in our own homes, and what we can do in our own schools. Module 3 starts to look at habitats and species. So now we're moving on to learning about all the different ways that we can rewild within a school setting, an urban or rural, wherever we are, and how to go about doing that, how to create a rewilding management plan, how to pull all of that learning together. And what's really important is having understood the state of nature to then be empowered right where they are within their school setting to get on and be part of that solution. And that's a wonderful thing, especially, you know, when so many young people are suffering from eco-anxiety. This is a wonderful, empowering thing. The final module keystone people and how to shape the future, here we start to move into a whole other area, and an area that I believe is a missing ingredient in our education system as well. And this is starting to explore, is there another way of being in the world? Is there another way of reimagining our human presence on Earth? And to answer that question, we start to look at Indigenous people and how they relate to the Earth. Now, all Indigenous people are animists. They believe that the world around them is alive and souled and spirited. They believe that all beings of nature are our relations, and they're absolutely correct in that. And the way that they relate to nature and the way that they understand the interconnectedness of all life, they've received this knowledge by being in relationship with nature. So we have so much to learn from them. And I would say that we have to rediscover our own Indigenous nature. So the final module, we start to help children understand that we need a new story. We need to return to this Indigenous way of thinking, to relating to the world in a different way. The modern industrial consumerist culture is not sustainable, and it is not the only way to be on this earth. So we start to explore that, and a spiritual and physical connection to nature. And many people find that quite difficult, that we might want to touch on the spiritual aspect. But the reality is we've got a spiritual problem. We don't just have a physical problem. We have a spiritual problem that can only be solved at the spiritual level. And that coming back into that relationship with nature at a physical and spiritual level is important. And I believe that rewilding is actually doing that, because to set about on your rewilding journey, you've had a change of heart. You've understood that the earth needs a change, that we've understood that we must give back. And that's not just a physical act, that's a spiritual act as well. So Chief Seattle, he says, humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web of life, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together and all things are connected. Now, this is a Native American man knowing exactly what the earth scientists, Johan Rockström and all of his colleagues at the Stockholm Resilience Centre have discovered and presented to us at the beginning of this webinar. So it's extraordinary, isn't it, that a man who is deeply connected to nature understands how nature works and sees each being of nature as a teacher. So we give children permission to start to think, what is the dream of the earth? What is this new story that we need? How do we reimagine our presence on earth? And it's an important exercise for them, which they actually really love and find incredibly easy to do. They are far more adept at tackling this task, perhaps, than we are. And we do need a vision. We need a strong vision for the future. And there is hope with vision. So I think it's a very important part of the programme, actually, and it helps us to pull everything together. So in pulling everything together, I would say that rewilding in school is absolutely critical, as is providing up-to-date ecological environmental education. And when we bring those two together, we have a mechanism, we have in our hands the opportunity to really create transformation, because we need transformation of our species and our culture. And I would say the dream of the earth is that human beings would come into that next stage of our growth and become true keystone species, creating life wherever we go. And I think that young people, in my experience, are creating this dream. Those who have been through the programme, those who are rewilding in their school grounds, are actually moving into this regenerative culture that we so desperately need. Now, it's gone very, very quickly, and I'm very aware that we've got quite a bit of time left for questions, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. So I'm going to end the slideshow there and stop sharing and hand back over to Jeff and Sammy, I think. How's that, Jeff? Is that correct? Can't hear you at the moment, Jeff.
Beg your pardon. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you. Just trying to do too many things at once.
That's all right.
Thanks ever so much, Lesley. We've had about 20 Yorkshire Rewilding Network webinars now since we founded the charity, and I don't think any has surpassed that one. So,
oh my goodness,
well, that's lovely.
That's a very generous thing to say.
We've got about 80 people on the webinar, and I know a lot more registered, and we'll look at the recording when we put it on our website in coming days. We've got a few questions in, but I would encourage people to add more to the Q&A if they have a question for Lesley. I'll get to those in a second. Also, just to reiterate, if you would like to be kept up to date with further activities that Yorkshire Rewilding Network has planned about rewilding schools, please just put your name and email address into the chat and send it to hosts and panelists. Don't need to share it with everyone, and we'll only use it for communicating about rewilding schools. But the network is here to bring people together, and there's already a dozen or more people have shared those details, and it promises to be a really positive route for people to share experiences and spread the hope, I think.
Yeah.
So Lesley, a few of the questions that are in, couple about sort of the practicalities, I think.
Yeah.
One querying about urban rewilding.
Yes.
So recognizing that this can be harder to do in a small urban school, which is entirely a tarmac with areas for play and car parking.
Yeah.
How can that kind of school get involved?
Lovely question. So we have been rewilding the 2 schools in Hove, and very much a situation of a lot of tarmac and a lot of Harris fencing. So here it's all about thinking vertically as well. So we would be looking at growing plants upwards. What climbing plants can we introduce? You know, we've had mini orchards created in containers. We've definitely had wildlife ponds put in. It's incredible what you can create with a little wildlife pond. And even in one school, we managed to get a little mini hedgerow going, even though we had to, you know, get tarmac dug up and all sorts of things like that. The other thing I would say is that we found that, you know, most urban schools do have a playing field. So I don't know whether this is a primary school that doesn't, but they've got that playing field, or they share a playing field. So that is one of the first places to target with your hedges and edges. So yes, and if you know, in the manual I do mention that, and you basically can translate what we've looked at tonight into that urban setting. So there's lots of options. Yeah.
Thank you. And you rightly mentioned the beauty of stopping doing things, which I'm always a big fan of, because people sometimes think it's extra effort, I'm busy, but you can save people both time and money here.
Absolutely.
In the medium and longer term, though, sometimes some areas may find docks or thistles or trees coming through, or the contractors need different expertise and tools perhaps to manage hedges that have been let to grow out for several years. Is that something you've come across, and how have you addressed those?
Yes, it is. I mean, I think so. It's a journey for each school, and they all deal with it independently. But hedgerows on a 3-year rotational cutting are not a problem at all, and so that's not been an issue. And you know, some schools do not want to see really serious scrubbing up of certain areas, so they will cut that at the end of a year, or cut a section of that rewilding area at the end of the year. So it really depends Each school is independent, each school is unique. And what we do say is when they're on the rewilding journey, email us, contact us if you've got a query and you don't know how to deal with this particular level of regeneration, let us know. There's always a solution for it. But the idea is to let it, as far as possible in the areas away from the school, let it rewild, let it scrub over, let it go on that journey. And the most amazing thing that I have seen, I've seen school bursars who at the beginning have been hugely resistant, actually being the advocates at the end. And I remember a very funny conversation at Sherborne Girls' School, actually, where they had a bank and, the tennis ball was flying into the rewilded area and they couldn't find the tennis balls. And the bursar who had initially been the land, agent who'd been initially very resistant against rewilding, was the absolute advocate, and the one at the end of the day who was saying, excuse me, we're trying to save the world, we're not going to cut it. So you'd be amazed how people, once the life starts to return, once they start to catch the vision and understand the backdrop, the context of, behind what we're trying to do here, which is why the education is so important, the resistance falls away in our experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. How many schools roughly have you engaged with? And,
Yeah.
and a couple of questions relating to that.
Yeah.
What have you found is the best way to approach them?
Yeah.
And how often do you find schools start to collaborate with each other as they get going?
Yeah. So we, in a very hands-on approach, have worked with over 22 schools now. Now that was in our pilot where we were going in and we were creating and really helping them get that rewilding journey underway. And in the beginning, I used to write phase 1 habitat plans for schools. It was that detailed, but obviously, that's going to contain us. We want every school everywhere to rewild. So that that's the number that came into the initial pilot. Now we have schools, the books, people buy books and they're rewilding their schools. So we have no idea just how far our reach is. In terms of the best way to approach schools, my experience is there is always in every single school someone who's a champion for nature. There's without a doubt, and I would seek that person out. Now, sometimes that might be the head teacher, amazing. Sometimes it might be the geography teacher. Sometimes it might be whoever's running the eco council or eco club within the school. Sometimes it might be one of the students, might be someone who's really passionate about nature that but there's always somebody, and I would find that person, because you need that ambassador on the inside who's going to champion the cause and run the scheme. And I would say with the education program, that to run that course in schools for students, you don't need to have any ecological understanding at all. It consists of short films and then actions that anybody can run. So that's the way it's been designed. So
and does it help the staff with their understanding as well? Because presumably there's different levels of experience.
Definitely, exactly. And so that's the beauty of it. Everybody can learn about this planetary science and how to rewild school grounds. And moving forward, our hope and our vision is that with extra funding that we'll be able to develop that education program, because at the moment it runs from year 6 upwards. We'd love to have it where it's age specific, rather than at the moment it's like a Disney film that it doesn't matter how old you are, you're going to be able to understand what you're learning. But it would be lovely to be able to tailor that, because we've had 18-year-olds doing the course, we've had 16-year-olds, 13-year-olds, and 9 and 10-year-olds. So we really like to make that more age specific in time.
The Q&A is going ballistic, so excuse me. I know you're answering and very kind of talking, and I'm looking all over the place trying to keep up with stuff. But
that's okay.
Numbers of people on saying we'd really like to access this, and how does it fit with the curriculum? So perhaps 2 bits there of what do people do if they want to engage with it, presumably via the website, and how it aligns with curriculum stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So very easy to access. If you go to the Operation Future Hope website, just click on courses, you're going to be taken to the Rewilding Education Centre. Anyone can sign up. It's free. And, you know, it is at the moment in development phase in terms of, I've just explained how we'd like to improve, but it's free for everybody. So you can access it. We do ask, as we're a not-for-profit, that anybody who is going to sign up and do that course for free, that they would buy a copy of the manual. A, it supports the learning, and B, it helps us. And in terms of curriculum, what we've done is really try to tailor it so that the course is cross-curricular, and it doesn't really matter. You know, you could be in studying English and literature and might be able to draw down on one of those lessons. You might be in a science class, and you could go off and do surveys as one of those lessons. So it can be woven into the curriculum in that way. What we have found is that schools have approached it in very different ways. One school we work with actually timetabled a proper lesson every week. All the girls in the year group were going to do it. That was an independent school. They had the flexibility to do that. Other schools have run it as part of their eco club, so as a after school. Others have actually drawn on that as part of different lessons. So everybody uses it differently. And it's flexible in that way, and it can be dipped in and out of. It doesn't have to be sequential.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have you collected any feedback from young people about the impact of the project on their knowledge and well-being?
Yes, we have. And in fact, we've got a little video that we put together for the crowdfunder campaign, actually, and it was fantastic. So their response has been, you know, that they've learned about rewilding, and learned about, I remember one girl saying, you know, that you had no idea that one species, a wolf, could actually change an entire ecosystem. So they're learning about species that are missing from our own landscape and starting to think about bringing them back and understanding who is missing. And they are also learning about a different approach to nature. So rather than counting and surveying and simply what's there, they may start to ask the question, who's there? So it's a more animistic, connected view of nature that they've gained, as well as learning how to create a rewilding plan, and that they can do that anywhere they go in their lives. Having done that course, they can look at a landscape and they can go, oh, well, you know, look at that, that's been intensely managed, we could do this, we could do that. So that's the knowledge that they're taking away with them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm jumping around a bit with
That's
subjects.
right.
I normally like to try and group them, but we're on question 18 now that you've covered so much of. So species-rich grassland or meadows, classically people would say you mow once a year and you take the cuttings off and so on.
Yep.
Does that tend to require specialist equipment, and do you find people sharing that if they need it, or? No,
I mean, so really, the girls' school, I think, is probably the most intensive meadow management that we've encountered in our pilot project. And in their situation, you know, they have their own gardeners, so they've dealt with that themselves. The state school, in fact, this would work really beautifully right across the board, is where they've required, at the Griffin School rather, where they required really, you know, more management than they could, habitat management than they could acquire from their contractors. They have worked with local volunteer groups who have come in and actually done that biomass removal. They've mown the meadows, they've taken away the cuttings for them. And that's actually a really fantastic model. If schools start to hook up with their local conservation network groups, and it actually is fantastic because it brings that community together. So we've had a lot of volunteering going on in the state schools who've been rewilding where they want to manage the grasslands in that way. But the majority of schools aren't necessarily developing, you know, species-rich grasslands and meadows. They are just rewilding and letting it go. And that's all right. And it doesn't really matter if it turns over into scrub, really, because it's about the principle of the actual act of rewilding in itself. But for those who really want to manage meadows and don't have resources, we encourage getting in contact with their local conservation groups.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I will take that opportunity just to plug YRN a bit as well. Most of the Yorkshire Rewilding Network, like this webinar, is free to access. So sign up for our newsletter, join our forum, and one area on the forum is a wild exchange, where we encourage people to put on if they either need some equipment or have some to offer and share, or want to volunteer or need volunteers. Again, just a way of bringing people together, which really speaks to the role of people and the collaborative nature that Lesley has mentioned on this.
Very important.
I think I've covered most of the questions, Lesley. I would just comment that there are a great number of entries in the chat and the Q&A about how great it is to see the spiritual aspect of this, and how people feel that children are often connected to that anyway.
Yes.
How inspiring it is, how people are feeling like they will follow up on this.
Fantastic.
So we would love to continue sort of the collaboration between your operation and Yorkshire Rewilding Network as we go forwards.
Fantastic.
Well,
Jeff, I might just jump in. I might just jump in there and say, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could collaborate to rewild schools across Yorkshire? We can do it. There's nothing to stop us. It's a dream, it's a vision, isn't it? So that would be a wonderful thing for the future.
It is. And then we'll line you up for talks all around the country, because there are many other local rewilding networks. And why stop at Yorkshire? We're obviously would be first, but no, it is a very sharing kind of environment. So straight away someone says, and North East Derbyshire, please.
Yes.
So, that's your original patch, I think.
Brilliant.
Just before I ask Sammy, oh, sorry, Andy Steele, I did spot that and forgot it again. The last question I didn't see is Yorkshire Wildlife Trust asking if you would be willing to share some of your before and after pictures.
Yes.
Because they go into schools and see a lot of what looks like your before. So Andy, if you, I think you already have, Andy, actually shared your email to the hosts. Yes. We can put you in touch with Lesley.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Anything you need, no problem at all.
Thank you. And thanks for giving me the nudge, Andy. I had that down before, but I'd missed it. Many of you have emailed us to be kept in touch. I'll come to our next webinar in a moment. But Sammy, is there anything you would like to add just before we wrap up for the evening?
Apart from the fact I'm feeling incredibly inspired and wishing I was still a teacher right now, I just wanted to reiterate to everyone how we are here to serve you. Anyone who's trying to rewild in Yorkshire, we are here to help you any way we can. And within our network, we have people who will donate you seeds. There's a special lady who's actually on this course who'll donate you some tree seedlings, because that's what she does pretty much full time, is create little seedlings to give away for free for people. So we have a really good network of people to support you. Also, just to reiterate Lesley's point of finding your local community rewilding site project, not all of them are on our maps. If you get in contact with us, we should be able to find who's most local to you, because there's nothing more than they want to get into the schools. They're all desperate to do that. So together we can really get this going. And thank you for all being here, and thank you, Lesley, for your inspiring words.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
So I'll just share a final couple of slides just about if you didn't feel comfortable putting your email into the chat, but do want to share your details with us, you can email into us at info@yorkshireRewildingNetwork.org.uk. If you've enjoyed this and would like to make a donation, we'd very much appreciate that. Details on the screen now. And our next webinar is on the 28th of February, continuing kind of the community theme. We'll have a panel discussion from a number of groups around the region who are rewilding. The link to register for that is on our website. We do regularly get well over 100 people registering and nearly 100 people attending. So you're in good company. But I think at that point, I will leave these slides circulating. So if you would like to put anything in the chat, you've got a little while to do so. And we look forward to hearing from you, to keeping in touch, and to seeing many of you at our next webinar in must be 6 weeks' time. But thank you for attending this evening. Bye for now.